What's up? Hey, hello, everyone. Wow. So today we are back going to be talking about Survivor, not the US version again, but we're talking about Survivor South Africa, season 6, the Philippines. Today we are talking about episode 8 through 10. So my name is Rachel.
I'm Alyssa, and we're starting to get into the meat of the series. We made it to the merge, so
Woo!
woo! It's getting interesting because I don't know who's gonna win, and I don't like that.
Yeah, so Alyssa and I are unspoiled, so everything is like brand new, fun things are happening. We did hit the merge. This cluster of episodes, I guess you can say. And we're hoping that it's not going to be a pagonging of all of Polisa's old alliance members because the first two merge boots were that after the last episode or episode 8 we'll talk about first, which is the episode right before the merge.
Yep, and episode 8 was also kind of an interesting episode because a tribe got down to only 2 members, which I feel like we don't see a lot on US Survivor anymore because they normally make the merge before that happens. But that happened, and then after the merge, it looks like it could be a pagonging, which is, as Rachel said, lame.
Yeah, because Alyssa and I were talking before we went live, and we both really like Palesa, so we're rooting for her, but her two closest allies just got voted out in this cluster, and we would be okay with a Werner win as well. But right now, it's not looking good for Palesa. She just played her idol in the last episode 10 is the last of this cluster. So I'm excited for the next cluster as well. And things did get interesting these 3 episodes. So going into the start of episode 8, we see Katinka finally getting some more screen time because she has been high-key very invisible throughout the first 8 episodes of this season. And we see Katinka wants to vote out Jean, Werner, and Annalise on that tribe is on board. And they're saying that, oh yeah, Katinka is making a name as a player. She's someone to watch out for. That's what Werner says. And then Werner also says that his closest to Katinka on that tribe. And it seems like everyone has like a final 2 deal with Werner. Katinka and Werner are close apparently. Jean really thinks Werner is her number 2. Before Tony got switched off of that tribe, Tony thought Werner was her number 2. And then we also see Annalise talking to Werner, and like maybe she has a thing for him because she always says like, oh, he's so manly. And then Annalise wants to bring Werner to the final 2 as well. So I don't know. Werner's got something going on that just attracts final 2s.
Yeah, it's like he's kind of an alliance slut, and so I'm interested to see if that eventually backfires on him because I feel like a lot of times when people end up with like 6 or 7 final 2 deals, the way Werner seems to have, it ends up with a really bitter jury because everyone's like, well, I thought I was your number 1. And then when they're all like, oh, we all thought we were your number 1, like that can be bitter jury. And we know how bitter juries don't always work out super well. So
Yeah, I think it'll be really interesting to see how Werner navigates this post-Survivor merge because it does seem like he's allied with everyone. He is in the majority right now. So I think it will be very interesting, especially because it does seem he has like a lot of winner capital. He gets a lot of confessionals. Even if his tribe isn't going to tribal, he is seen talking to people, and we know that he has a lot of final 2s versus a lot of the other people this season. We don't really know what their end game plans are, but we know a lot about Werner, so I think that's interesting. And if he does end up being the winner, then I don't know. I feel like it would be sort of obvious because he's just so sort of in your face, I think, in these 3, at least this cluster of episodes, even if he's not maybe the main character of the episode.
yeah, I feel like he's the decoy winner or like the David Wright type character where he
The
gets the
4th
final
placer.
4. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Which I don't know, because if Werner's not winning and Palesa is going to get voted out because she's on the bottom now, I really hope Palesa can make it far and then win the game because everyone else, I don't know. I don't really know much about like everyone else. I would like PK to win. I think after this cluster, he seems to be on the outs, and so I would be interested to see how he can navigate. So I would like a PK win as well, but if it's not Werner, PK, or Palesa, then I'm sort of like, everyone else hasn't really shown us their game yet, I don't think.
Yeah, I was joking with Rachel that like the worst final two would be like Tom and Jean, because all we know is that everyone seems to hate those two. So
yeah, which is like crappy for us as viewers because I really want them to get voted out. And I'm like, it could have happened in episode 10 this time when Tom could have gotten voted out if the votes went that way and just one more vote was needed. But I know, I think Tom and Jean are like the perfect final two goats, or like the people that you bring to the end because no one really respects them or no one really likes them enough to vote for them. So for people playing the game, I think that would be so smart to do. So I think we're stuck with them for the long haul. At least one of them is probably going like very deep into the game, which is sort of crappy because I really don't like them on my screen.
it's like some Survivor players, you don't want them to win, but you still think they're decent people. And I feel like with both Tom and Jean, we've been shown how they're like kind of crappy people, or at least not people I like and want to root for. And so knowing that one of them will probably be in the final two, I guess that's one of the things where people talk a lot on Survivor US about how like, oh, the final two is, or the final three is bad because basically one person is just always a goat. But I feel like with a final three, sometimes you do get like two legitimate contenders for the win, and that makes it more interesting than like, for example, in like Survivor Ghost Islands, if if there had been a final two instead of a final three, it would have been a shoe-in for either Dom or Wendell, whichever one of them got to be sitting at the final two next to Laurel. And so I feel like that is kind of like a point against final two, where if you can drag a goat all the way to final two, you're pretty much guaranteed to win. And I think that's kind of like
Yeah, it's an interesting debate. I think, I don't know, I would like to see another final two in US Survivor because of everything that we've talked about on a previous podcast, talking about how like things that Survivor needs to change per se with final threes. So I would want to see some more final twos. And I think you could get those blowouts where maybe there's a goat or someone that isn't deserving at the end in a final two, but also in final threes, you could also have two goats at the end, like in Boston Rob's winning season. So I think like it could happen that way as well. But moving on, in this episode, we also see sort of tribal lines being like gotten rid of because it has been very much like original red versus original blue on the tribe swapped tribes. And so we see PK saying that, hoping that voting Tevin off will hopefully get rid of the OG tribal lines. And then we also hear Werner say that this is the end of OG blue because, and then they think that Josie was the one that voted Tevin out. And so that's why they thought it was the end of the OG blue, which doesn't necessarily happen once we hit the merge, which is interesting because it seemed like everyone was like, yeah, we're not tribal lines from the beginning tribes. It's not red strong and OG blue strong, but we're just people playing this game, which after the first two boots of the merge being two people who were on an original tribe together, it does seem that it is sort of original tribes. But after episode 10, it does seem that maybe things are being more split open because like Oling, Palesa, and Tom are left from their original tribe.
Yeah, it's one of those things where the original blue is very much we bleed blue. So I don't know. I don't really like it when people are like, oh, I'm going to stick with my original tribe lines just because that seems to be how you get boring stuff. So
yeah, like a pagonging. And I guess Annalise was also from like Palesa Tom's OG tribe, but she likes Werner enough that she's able to flip. And then Tom has sort of flipped on his OG to go with the majority, which we'll talk about in episode 9 and 10. So in episode 8, we go into a reward challenge, which is like the sand worm challenge. And everyone is like practicing it on their beach, and all I could think about was Karishma doing the sandworm challenge for Applebee's, and I was like, oh my god, like what the heck? This is such a throwback, and like they were practicing their sandworm.
I think it's so funny because sandworm, there's just like this sense of discomfort in watching it, just because the people who do the sandworm, oh, they never look good at doing the sandworm. And then I also think it's really funny because when they like finish doing the sandworm to like do a puzzle or whatever, they always have like the entire side of their face covered in sand. And it's a time. So
Yeah, somehow, Tom and Boosie must have did really good practice because they were super quick. Yellow was like super far ahead. They had a really big lead. Annalise was so slow. Katinka did like a freaking roll and like almost broke her neck. I was like, holy crap,
I
when she
saw
did that roll.
and I like, if I was Nico, my heart would have stopped.
Yeah, literally, it like, I don't know. It was like a lot of pressure. It looked like on her neck and upper back. I was like, oh my God, at least they didn't edit in a cracking sound. Like when they kept in the cracking sound from the chickens and stuff being killed. I was just, oh my God, this is too much.
Yeah, and so the rewards for this challenge, okay, I'm never going to understand why on Survivor they would give a reward that's just like entirely sweets. Because it's like sweets have no nutritional value. The two rewards were the winning tribe got this like chocolate fountain thing with like chocolate brownies and strawberries and whatever. And the second place tribe got a jar of jelly beans. And like I was watching the winning tribe like eat and eat and eat, and I'm like, guys, you're gonna make yourself sick. You haven't had sugar in like several weeks, and now you're eating like more sugar than I would feel comfortable eating in one sitting. When I still like, ugh. And
Yeah,
someone did end up puking, so I was like, kind of serves you right. Like,
I feel like it's got to be about the taste because, yeah, like I guess you probably would want like spaghetti, which we see in an immunity challenge in this cluster. Like you'd probably rather have stuff with those calories and everything in order to perform. But definitely, I think like the chocolate feast reward is more for like your taste buds kind of thing. And yeah, what Shanae did vomit on the yellow tribe winning. I was so nervous for the yellow tribe because Boosie, if he lost that lead that the yellow tribe had after the snake worm part, Tom looked so pissed when everyone started catching up. I was so scared that Boosie would literally get like berated by Tom if Boosie lost that lead. So I was like, please, Boosie, please win this. I do not want to see Tom go off because Tom can't even do puzzles. So it's like, I don't know. Tom just seems like he yells at people for losing challenges when he's not the one like in that hero spot.
yeah, being in the hero spot of any challenge seems so stressful, but especially stressful when you have so much of a lead and in reward challenges because there is a difference between first place and second place. Like in immunity challenges, I feel like you have more wiggle room because it doesn't matter whether you're first or second, like you're still not going to tribal council. But like the difference between the chocolate feast they got and the jar of jelly beans, astronomical. No.
Yeah, so we see yellow win first. Thank God for Boosie. Didn't get screamed at. And then red winning second, so the jelly bean jar. And the chocolate feast, the entire thing was just a Shanae confessional on how much she hates Tom. So this was like, okay, a crapper on Tom just segment. And it's like, really weird because I feel like episode 1 you're made to like Tom, and then just Tom's winner stock and like his likability ratio has gone downhill ever since the beginning. And we see that also in like the next few episodes when he's yelling at PK for like no reason at all. And here we just see Shanae totally roast Tom, and like it was sort of really gross. He like licks his fingers, sticks his fingers into the jars, and I don't know. It was an interesting segment.
Yeah, interesting is definitely a word for it. I just felt like I'm uncomfortable even when I agree with the player being dunked on, like that they're bad. It's just so uncomfortable to listen to how much someone hates someone else for like several minutes. So
Yeah, I agree. It was like a very interesting editing choice because like Shawnee and Tom used to be super close. They were working together and like they were together during the episode 2 rock draw on the same side of the rock draw. And so I don't know, it's like are the editors putting this like crap on Tom segment in there because Tom is going to like go up in like a ball of fire later on? But like if you're just having this so people don't like Tom, I feel like he has to do something like really wild in the next few episodes or his vote off episodes that like warrants everyone like crapping on him all the time.
yeah, it just
You know, maybe he's just like really crappy to live with. So maybe it's warranted, you know, we don't know.
yeah. And I feel like kind of the same thing with Jean, where like, yeah, she's not a super physical player, but that doesn't seem to be like worthy of all the hate she gets. So
I think it'll be interesting to see in their boot episodes what happens. And that's like the end of their arc or storyline. So, speaking of, we go into the immunity challenge and we see Annalise and Shawnee sit out on the bench. And that's important because Annalise and Shawnee were on the same side during the rock draw with Tom. But then going into the merge later, like they don't reconnect or anything because Annalise has totally jumped ship. But it was cool to see this in this episode not knowing what is going to happen at the merge because it was cool. Like they just got to sit on the sit out bench together and they were like talking strategy. And I feel like we only sort of really see this kind of intertribal or intertribe talk at like challenges or just randomly on like foreign versions of Survivor. I feel like it happens a lot in like Australian Survivor where the tribes talk at challenges with each other, but I feel like we don't really see that on air in US Survivor a lot. And so Annalise and Shawnee were talking about the idol, how they dislike Tom, and they also talked about Katinka.
yeah, I thought it was really funny because the way they cut it together, it's like the two of them talking while the challenge is like happening. So I think it is really interesting to see like cross tribe talk because it's like, did they ask to sit out specifically so they could talk to each other? Like, how did they end up with that? You know, so that
Yeah, I think like if you use it for strategy, I think that could be super interesting. If like US Survivor, you're sitting on the same sit out bench, you're not like separated 10 feet or something like that, but like you can strategically be like trying to sit out in order to talk to your ally who also strategically tries to be put on the sit out bench for the challenge. I don't know. I think that could add another layer of interesting tribe dynamics and strategy.
yeah, and I think like is it also strategy of like maybe someone is less physical, but you also really don't want them to have a chance to go to the sit out bench and talk to someone else. So
Yeah, I think it's super interesting. That was just something that I noted because they literally sat on the same bench together. Similar to the reward challenge, we see Yellow is super far ahead again, Vusi in that closer spot. Everyone again catches up. Katinka is in the closer spot again, which is very similar to the reward challenge we saw this episode, as well as the basketball challenge that Vusi and Katinka totally rocked at and did amazing at throwing those basketballs in. So Vusi wins. It was the like not snake puzzle, but like the puzzle where you have two strings and then you pull the ball up and not let it fall into the holes. Vusi was like sweating and shaking so much. I was like, oh my God, with those camera angles, it was really sort of stressful to watch.
yeah, like there was one scene where you can see like Vusi's entire arm shaking, and I was like, oh my God, how is he gonna get it in when he's shaking that bad? But then he did. So
Literally, yeah. So Blue loses, and I was like, LOL, that is karma for voting Tevin out last week because I don't know. I thought sort of voting Tevin out maybe wasn't the best move, and now they're on a losing streak. They lost the reward challenge this episode, and they lost the immunity challenge. So now they're going from a tribe to 3 to a tribe to 2, which also I think looking forward and going into the merge, voting Tevin out wasn't a good idea because then we see Tony and PK, this tribe of two, because they vote Josie out this episode. Tony and PK literally are sort of on the bottom of their original tribe with Werner and all of them. And so if maybe they had Tevin, maybe they could have formed like an opposing alliance with the Palesa crowd. But it just seems like PK and Tony are in a tough spot right now.
I just wonder because we don't get to see what happens, what would have happened if Tevin had stayed, you know? So maybe they end up just as screwed if Tevin does stay and they vote out someone else. So
yeah, it's not what happened. And every Survivor game, you can probably have like thousands and thousands of combinations, permutations of how the game can go, similar to like fantasy Survivor games. Like one person leaving or one person staying can totally change up the game. I definitely think at least if like PK or Tony aren't able to reintegrate themselves or able to create a majority in the upcoming episodes, I think you could probably point to their downfall as voting Tevin out in that first tribal council they went to rather than voting Josie out, because maybe Tevin would have been really good at like the snake ball challenge thing and they could have won because PK was on that closer spot on the like ball challenge thing. So maybe Tevin could have won it for their tribe and they wouldn't have gone down to a tribe of two.
Yeah, so I guess we'll never know, but it is not looking good for either of them. So
yeah, we see also before Tribal Council that Tony and PK are sort of peeved that the other tribes aren't throwing the challenges because they have a majority so that they could vote out a like red person from the original tribes, and saying that they like, but I don't know, that really didn't make sense because they also have an expendable red person in Josie. So like, why would someone else throw the challenge if you all also have someone who was OG red that you also have like is expendable? So that really didn't make much sense. And maybe the other blue, like the OG blue coming into the merge after Tony, PK, Josie voted out Tevin, they got like super sketched out because they voted out Tevin before Josie. Like, oh, you guys betrayed the blue trust kind of thing. So that's why we're not letting you back into the majority alliance. So maybe that Tevin vote did have a lot of ramifications.
yeah, so I thought the whole thing with like, oh, they're blue strong, blah, 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 was just Tony being angry that she had to go to tribal. Like, it just seemed like she was really, really pissed at everyone else instead of admitting her own failures. So
I agree. Tony had a really negative edit this episode. That's why I thought maybe, oh, Tony might go home this episode and Josie and PK would like team up or something, because, Tony. But then I was like, no, that won't work because Tony is technically the swing vote because Tony and Josie are friends, and then Tony and PK have their original alliance friendship. So she won't be voted out even if she is getting like a hella negative edit this episode. So yeah, I really thought, maybe she would keep Josie so then she would have an in back with the original red come merge, but she votes out Josie and she keeps PK, so they are maybe trying to be OG blue strong, but I think with that Tevin vote, maybe that line is severed.
yeah, I don't know. I didn't think about this that much, and now I kind of wish that I had thought about it more.
Yeah, I don't know. I just think it was inevitable for like Josie to go home, probably because of like the tribe swaps that happened last time. Similarly, maybe not so much for Annalise because she really like got herself in with Werner, that maybe Jean would have went home on the other tribe. But like Josie being swapped and then still being in a 3-1 like minority with Tevin in there, like it's 3 red, 1 blue. You're probably screwed either way. Her only saving grace would probably be if they won that immunity rather than going to this final tribal council, then she would be at the merge. And I was sad. I really wish Josie made it to the merge, because if Josie could have teamed back up with like Polaisa and Boosie, I think they could have had such a strong thing, because Josie wanted to go back and work with them. So I was bummed about that.
Yeah, I was bummed too. I think Josie could have gone further. So it just kind of sucks that she was put on a sucky tribe.
Yeah, and so, Tony and PK, I thought needed to be number ones now. We sort of see that going into the merge, and like PK, because he voted out Tevin, doesn't have a number one ally, versus Tony sort of has Werner as their final two, but Werner is double dipping, so we see that might not work out so much for Tony. So Tony and PK going into the merge are in a very not good spot.
Yeah, it seems like if you would have asked me like 3 episodes ago what the positioning would be at the merge, I never would have said Werner as number 1. So that was kind of wild.
Yeah, Mr. Two Idols. So going into episode 9, we see it is the merge time. So yeehaw, 10 people. So they voted 8 people out pre-merge, which I thought was interesting, because US Survivor, we see like 13-person merges now. And so having a 10-person merge, I was like, that is very, very interesting. I can recognize all the people here, and the important people who are important to the plot are getting screen time.
I still can't recognize all the important people, but that's just because Shawnee like looks like Katinka to me. So,
I think Shawnee and Josie, but now Josie's out, so I only got Shawnee there.
Yeah. So, also, I was realizing that actually I think Werner and Martinez looked really similar.
Yeah.
I don't think they were ever on the same tribe.
They started on the same tribe together, but they have like the dark hair.
I could recognize anyone, so
yeah, I think it was interesting. The merge, it was a pink color, and I was like, oh, that's a really pretty buff color. And Nico named their tribe, so they didn't get to pick their tribe name. And so they go into a merge feast, which is another Steers promo. And I was like, oh gosh, how many Steers sponsorships are we having? Like, we just had a Steers sponsored reward maybe like 2 episodes ago, and then the merge feast is Steers sponsored. So maybe Alyssa and we have to try Steers and try to figure out how we can get that, because we tried Applebee's and saw the hype with that.
South Africa
just to try Steers. Maybe we can order it online and see like what the hype is, because if it's in 2 of these episodes, like, it's better than Applebee's.
Yeah. I'm sad because right now, like, most countries aren't letting United States citizens in. Otherwise, I totally would consider flying to South Africa. Just because, like, I'm so bored. So.
Yeah, I just think whenever you have, like, promo sponsorships like this, you need to have charisma level enthusiasm. I think it'd be so funny if people went on reality TV and then you just have like the most outrageous reactions or confessionals about the sponsored rewards like Charisma had. No one can live up to that confessional, literally.
Applebee's is my favorite sit-down restaurant.
So good. I need someone to live up to that. So no one gave that level of promotion to Steers. No one said it was their favorite, like, barbecue sauce, meats, whatever. And I really thought maybe with the merge feast, there would be like a clue or something hidden there, but it didn't seem like there was one hidden at the merge feast, which I guess is good, because if it's hidden under like your placemat, then just depending on where you choose to sit, there's so much randomness that it's not really like, oh, I saw it in a drink and I got that drink or something, or I saw it on a plate and so I hid the plate. But just like when you have to pick random and you get the random seat that has like a napkin or something, that's just a little too random. I'd want some thought going into it.
Yeah. And I guess like with going into the merge, there were also several idols already in play, like Werner's 2 and Paulisa's, and then I think there was another one also.
Yeah, I think PK finds one this episode, next episode. So then that's where we see in episode 10, like an idol train happening. And I don't know, with the merge, it was weird. It looked like back to a new camp. Like this one also looked like it was built professionally, and then the camp like bedding area was facing differently than like Werner's professional built camp was. So I don't know, was that a new camp? Because it just seems like everyone gets free built professional camps.
Yeah, I wasn't really sure about that either. And I think one of the fun things about Survivor is watching them all have to go back to like the shithole camp. But no.
Yeah, it like the bedding was definitely professionally built. They didn't have the swing or anything, so it wasn't Werner's old camp. And the first two camps, no way they had like the interlacing like bedding that they had. It was just too looking professional at this new camp.
Yeah. I don't get it. Part of Survivor is watching them complain about how like badly they're sleeping and stuff. So having a professionally built camp is just not as fun.
Yeah, it was lifted off the ground. It was not like a crappy in the hole ground ants eating at you kind of camp. So this is a fancy camp. So going into the merge, we see Vusi approaching Werner. And so just something about Werner, you know, brings in people that want to work with him. And Vusi tells Werner that he wants Tom out of the game. But Tom was following them down the beach and he hears that Shanae betrayed him. And then later, you know, Werner seems like a smart dude at the game. He goes to Tom because he sees Tom as the like outsider loner dude that gets shat on by his tribe. So he's like, ha, smarts. I am going to do the social game and bring Paul in. And I was like, yes, good for Werner, because honestly, you'd want to bring in the person that everyone hates because that's a good person to bring to the end, sort of like Sean. But also, like, gosh darn, why can't Werner work with Police's group and vote out Tom? That would be so great.
It would be so great, but I feel like they've mentioned voting out Tom so much that I feel like it's kind of boy who cried wolf at this point. Because I feel like there's been like 3 separate occasions where voting out Tom has been mentioned. So
yeah, now it's just sort of like a decoy vote, or like people are realizing that Tom is like the new Martinez and Jean's the new Martinez, because Jean was going to go home in like the second episode before Stacey Lee quit. So it just, now they realize, Tom and Jean, they are not as like wild card as Martinez. So let's bring them along because no one likes them and I can win against them at the end.
yeah, they're just like perfect boots. And I wonder how you choose between Tom versus Jean. Like which one is which one's a better goat?
Oh my god, I sort of want to see like if Werner, Jean, and Tom make final 3, and then Werner has to pick between those two, and then it's like, who is disliked more out of my 2 goat friends?
Yeah, that would be funny. So
yeah, and speaking of voting Tom, we see PK wants to vote out Sean, which that doesn't happen either, to our sadness in this episode. So PK says he wants to have a blue out to save one of the reds. So PK wants to vote with Paulesa's group, and I'm like, okay, yes, we love to see it. And so PK tells Shanae to go and talk to Tom, and then they can all vote Sean and they'll have the numbers. But Tony doesn't want to vote out John. It seems like Tony wants to go back to Werner and have that majority, which, you know, it does make sense considering that Blue is going into the merge with a majority. Just sucks to see a pagonging start to happen in episodes 9 and episodes 10.
Yeah, I'm really hoping that 11 reverses our fortune. So
speaking of pagonging, we see the Blue Tribe want to vote out Vusi because Vusi is a challenge threat, being the hero role or in the closer spot of all the challenges. So going into the immunity challenge, we see it's that triangle balance on the water challenge. And literally I was like, okay, yes, these challengers are fun. So they're on the top balance, and then everyone drops like flies and Tony wins.
yay. I feel like this challenge like isn't that fun to watch, and it doesn't seem that fun to compete in either. So
that was like my whole notes from the challenge, was like no order or anything. Everyone just dropped at the end, and then Tony won, which, I mean, I don't think she was on the block, so it doesn't really change anything.
Yeah. I always think it's more interesting when like someone who's on the chopping block wins the challenge, because then people have to scramble.
Yeah, we like it spicy. So after the immunity challenge, we see Tom mad at Shanae. I was like, ugh, not fun. And so, I really wanted to see Tom go, but that's obviously not going to happen because Tom is with Werner now. And it seems like Tom is super, super solidified with the Werner trio or group that they have, even though, I don't know, it's like, Tom should know. I feel like that he's on the bottom of the Palesa group and he goes through this like number computation on the beach before tribal, but he's also on the bottom of Werner's group. Technically, he's on the bottom unless someone like Werner wants to bring Tom and drag him to the end kind of thing. So we see like Palesa trying to get Tom onto their side and we can do like a 5-5 and then we'll let fate decide, which I don't know if they want to do another rock draw right at the start of the merge, but it doesn't seem like Tom wanted to go with the Palesa group. And he says he's like a number on, he doesn't want to be there to be just a number. But then I'm like, okay, bro, I don't know. It seems like you're sort of a number on both sides now, the way you played it.
I feel like with Tom, he's a number on both sides. And so he went with the side that made him, that was at least kind of nice to him. And I feel like that's where the importance of social game comes in, because if you're equally screwed, no matter which side you go in, then you're going to go in the side that likes you more. Or
yeah,
like
I
you
agree.
could argue that like the Palesa group, he would technically do better because he'd be the bottom of like 4 instead of the bottom of 5 or whatever the numbers were at that point. But also, that doesn't really make that much of a difference at that point.
Yeah, it's like a sort of maybe 1 or 2 person like swap out, I guess. And he says it in the episode. He says, I can go with the people who don't like me or with people who I don't know. And so he goes with the people that he doesn't know, which, it is an interesting choice. It also is sort of like a hot mess choice considering he just met Werner because they were never on a tribe together come merge. And so it just, I guess it goes to show like Werner's social game, the other people in Werner's alliance's social game of like being able to bring in the wounded lamb or the person that's disliked on the other side and get them to flip onto your side. But Werner didn't even need to do that technically, because if he brought Tony and PK back into the blue group, then they would have still had the majority over the Palesa Tom side of things. And so it's good social game to bring him in.
Yeah, it really is. And I feel like people don't always think about like good social game. Like people will knock Tom and Jean for having bad social game, but then will be outright rude and mean to them in return. And it's like, it doesn't make it good social game just because they were rude first. So
yeah. So we also see Tony wants to be like super fancy with the vote. And I don't know, it just got sort of really complicated. She wanted to trick PK into thinking that the vote was Palesa and then try to flush Palesa's idol. But the real vote would actually be Vusi. So they're telling PK to vote Palesa, but everyone else is voting Vusi. And then at tribal, like, PK would be hoodwinked and be like, oh, I voted this way and that's what you all told me to do. So then now, you all can trust me kind of thing. But PK doesn't know that. And yeah, sure, PK is playing both sides. We see him trying to talk to Palesa and Vusi's alliance, but like they don't have the numbers. So then he realizes he needs to jump ship and go back and vote with the Werner Tony crew. But I don't know, it just seems like it made it just so complicated that if I were PK and your alliance mates that you were with on day 1 together on the OG Blue Tribe tried to do that to you and try to test your vote, it just seems like a little much. I could see trying to test Tom with his vote and like, oh, Tom isn't trying to be a double agent. He isn't faking that everyone hates him, because that would be a cool plan going into merge. Like, go be a double agent for us. Let's pretend we all hate you. Go over there and like infiltrate. But I don't know. It just seems like if you're trying to pull one over like this and do this weird kind of you vote this way, we vote this way to trick you into voting that way on your own peer person that you've known for 20 days, it just seems like too much.
Yeah, it seemed like one of those things where they were trying to be clever, but they didn't actually need to be. So it was like overcomplicated. And I feel like overcomplicated in Survivor is when you get in trouble.
Yeah, which I mean, I guess it makes sense to tell PK something different because maybe if he were super double agenting, that PK would tell Palesa to play the idol kind of thing on herself or on Boosie, and they would play the idol correctly. But I don't know. It just seemed like PK doesn't know Palesa, Boosie. They've never been on the same tribe together, and you're going to try to trick him after what, 1 or 2 days on the merge kind of thing. It just is a little questionable after you've been on the same tribe with him for so long.
Yeah. It just, this whole like idea, like I see why they maybe thought it was a good idea, but then they should have been like, actually, no. So I feel like this is like the hunger and sleep deprivation getting to them, where they don't have that moment where they think, actually, no, this isn't actually that great of an idea.
Yeah, so we see Tribal. Vusi's voted out, first member of the jury. Very sad. It was a 7-3 split. So Palesa, Vusi, and Shanae vote incorrectly. And Tom and PK, and I guess you can say Annalise because Annalise was on the same OG tribe as the Palesa crew. They flop and vote out Boosie, which, you know, it does make sense for PK. I think if you're PK and you really did want to work with the Palesa group, they obviously don't have the numbers and they aren't going to get the numbers this week. So, you know, you're not going to flop into the minority. So it does make sense for PK to stay with the majority. Makes sense for Tom also to go to the majority because it's people that maybe fake like him or actually like him versus Palesa, Vusi, Shanae have sort of burned him in the past. So, like, I don't think you can fault Tom and PK for flopping, but I just wish, you know, the Palesa crew had the majority and could vote out someone off of Werner's crew.
Yeah, I like the Palesa crew better than Werner's crew, so like
Big sad that we see another person of Palace's crew go in episode 10. So a semi-pagonging so far. We go into the reward challenge, and the two team captains are Tom and Palesa, which I thought was kind of funny because they sort of butt heads a lot. And so PK was not picked, and so he gets to sit out. And PK, for not getting picked in the like draw of the team captains, when the team captains pick their tribe members to compete with them, he gets free food. He gets like a hot dog for not being picked, which I thought was a cool twist. Like we see twists like this on US Survivor where the person not picked for the challenge gets to like vote on the winner of the challenge. And then if you choose the winning tribe, you get to go on the reward with them kind of thing. But he just gets a free hot dog for not being picked, which I thought was funny. And it was interesting. The thing I didn't like was that the clue, and it was immunity idol clue, was hidden like in the hot dog wrapper food part, versus I wish it was sort of hidden like on the bench like we've seen in US Survivor, or just maybe hidden and not so like, oh, random, you were not chosen, so it's random that you weren't picked, and so now you're just going to get a clue in your lap in your hot dog, versus stick it on the bench or something, hide it a little, so even if you're not
I
picked.
think it was hidden. I think it was like the tray had a false bottom and the clue was under the false bottom of the tray. That's what it looked like to me, at least. Like,
Yeah,
it
I don't
didn't
know.
look like it was directly underneath the hot dog, which I think is good because it's like in the one in HHH when it was the spaghetti and it was just underneath the spaghetti, it's like, that's dumb. But when you have to actually look for it, I think.
Okay, yeah. If it's a false bottom, that's better. Like it takes some skill or talent. You're actually like knocking on the wood or whatever. But to me, it looked like it was just like, here's the tray, and then you have a hot dog in like another tray. And then like if you like lifted up the tinfoil wrappering stuff, then it was like just at the bottom of the tray without like a false bottom, which I guess let us know in the comments, was like, where was this clue hidden?
Yeah, if you know, just because maybe I'll go back and rewatch that because it looked to me like a false bottom, but
Yeah, I would be interested in knowing, because if PK was able to like suss out a false bottom, that's good for him. You know, you're not just enjoying the hot dog, but you're actually looking. Just like if the clue were like hidden on the bench or something, then you're actually keeping your eyes open and looking, versus if the clue was just like under some tinfoil in the wrapper of the hot dog.
Yeah. So I do also like him getting a reward better than it's like you sit out and you have no chance of a reward. So, because that's kind of lame, especially because it seemed like he wasn't not picked because of physical prowess.
Mm-hmm.
Like he said that the reason Tom picked the people he did is because he was trying to ingratiate himself again.
Yeah,
So,
which is smart, Tom picking the OG blue people to try to go on reward with them. Like, okay, yeah, Tom, we see you're thinking strategy wise, because people do bond on those reward challenges. So it makes sense that like Jean is picked over PK kind of thing. So I thought that was interesting too.
yeah. So that was cool. It was kind of sad though, the reward challenge. It looked like Red had it up until the last minute. So,
Yeah, Red like tried once with their word on the paddles, and then it was wrong, and then Blue wins. And so then it starts to get spicy. We go back to camp, and then Tom is once again arguing with someone on the tribe, and we see Tom and PK fight, which I'm like, I don't even know about what. They're like trying to fight manliness and like, oh, you're not a man kind of thing. And I was just sort of in my notes like, why is Tom fighting with everyone? We saw a few episodes ago Tom fight with Palesa and Boosie over Fishgate, and like it just seems he gets into fights with people, or he like escalates fights, or he picks fights with people. And I was just like, oh my god, I do not want to see them screaming at each other. And then PK calls Tom worse than Martinez.
yeah, I thought it was really funny that the worst thing that PK could think of to call someone was worse than Martinez. Like, that just made me laugh.
Yeah, and honestly, I think maybe Tom planned this fight because he seems to get into fights a lot, but I think Tom and PK fighting is actually good for Tom's game, which sucks for viewers, but it's good for Tom's game because now Tom can be like, I don't like PK, let's vote PK out, which we sort of start to see this episode as well. And even like the leader of Werner's crew, so like Werner and the people with a lot of power on that side, can be like, oh yeah, now we have a good reason. Tom is like really going to want to be with us because he's not going to go with PK and Palesa and all of them now. So honestly, if the fight was planned, good on Tom. But like, if Tom is just picking fights with random people for like the sake of it or for the heck of it, then I'm like, please stop. But it seems like this fight could have worked out in Tom's favor because Jean is on Tom's side. People were siding with Tom.
Yeah, this whole fight was so dumb. And it seems like, again, one of those things that I feel like wouldn't happen if they both, like, had a full stomach and a full night of sleep. So, yeah. I feel
You're
like
saying that their fancy bed doesn't let them sleep.
more like I could not sleep with 9 other people in my bed. So,
Yeah, so I mean, Tom is just really ingratiating himself with the Werner side of things by fighting with people and people being on his side for the fight. And honestly, sucks for PK. I think, PK had the right to get angry, I guess, about the stuff that Tom was saying, but also like bad on PK because I think the fight could only hurt PK, whereas it could only help Tom because people already know Tom is someone good to bring to the end, but now people have a reason to be like, PK is like fighting with people. We don't like PK. PK was going to flip on us last vote. Let's vote him out.
yeah. So, it's one of those things where technically they were both in the wrong, but because of their positions in the game, PK is going to get worse of it than Tom. Like, people already
Which
don't like
sucks.
Tom. But
I know, which is like, dang, when we say we're rooting for PK, Palesa, and then Werner, but Werner is like the obvious winner pick right now. And then we see PK starting to get shot on. Palesa's alliance members are already getting begonged. And I'm like, why can't we have nice things?
yeah. Yeah. So I still am like wondering like why people like this season so much, because it's a crazy season, but I feel like if it doesn't end with the right winner, it could be a crazy season a la, like, I don't know, Game Changers, where that was kind of a whack season, but it's not a season I would recommend people watch. So
Yeah, I think it is interesting because, like Alyssa and I have talked about, with like why we're doing Survivor South Africa season 6 and then maybe watching season 7 or something after this, is because they are so highly regarded in like the foreign Survivor, and even like on all-time best Survivor seasons in general, they're usually highly regarded. So I do not want to see a pagagging. So we go into the immunity challenge, and it's the like hanging on the rope ledge challenge. And Nico bargains with them with food. And so the first one, no one picks. And then the second one with the spaghetti. Some people, it was sort of like in Winners at War when people just sort of like fell, but then they still got like the peanut butter reward from it, or like they were going to fall anyway, so might as well drop for peanut butter. It seemed like someone like Tom was going to fall, and then like Nico just, oh, I have the food, and then Tom flops in. Like he was already half falling by the time Nico was announcing the food.
yeah, I love that someone like walked their way up the rope and was going to go get the food reward, and then Nico was like, no, you have to go in the water. So
Yeah, so I don't know. There's got to be some rule. Like if you're already half falling off, and I think I would have liked to see you have to verbalize that you're dropping to get the food, because it also, like, it seems like people just fell because they were falling, and then they're like, food, let me just fall in also. And so it was like 5 people sharing one bowl of spaghetti and like one glass of wine.
yeah, I wonder how they like went about that, because I feel like that could have also been an argument waiting to happen, where like
Fishgate 2.0.
Yeah. So it seems like they played nice though. Like they each took a sip of wine and like passed it around. So
yeah. So
it's weird because it looked like the first food reward was chocolate, and it looked like Nico had a much larger bowl of chocolate than he did bowl of spaghetti. I was like, what's up with that?
he knew the challenge was getting harder, that people would just drop for the sake of dropping and not really drop for food, that they flopped.
Yeah.
So after Vusi got voted out last time for being a challenge beast, challenge prowess, Katinka wins this immunity, and so now Katinka is stepping up into that challenge prowess, because both, I think Katinka and Vusi were really good at the challenges. They were always in that closer spot, so like, good on Katinka. She doesn't get that many confessionals, but she's good at challenges.
She is good at challenges, and I think it's kind of nice to see someone who's like good at challenges but doesn't get a lot of confessionals who's a woman, because I feel like we get that a lot with like men in US Survivor. So Katinka, thank you for being the gender representation that we deserve. But
so yeah, going into After Tribal, we see Werner wants to vote out PK. So very sad face. And he says that he wants to do Tony a favor and not tell Tony that they're voting out PK, because it would be good jury management for Tony. So he's like, doing one for the team kind of thing, getting that jury pandering going on, which is smart thinking, for Tony and Werner to do. So Werner is telling Shanae as the fake name, and you would keep Tony out of the loop, that the vote is actually PK.
Yeah, and that seems like a good move to me, to keep people out of the loop. So yeah.
Which I don't think Tony, because it seems like Tony and Werner have sort of a strained relationship after like last vote and now this vote, that she is going to take them trying to vote PK out nicely. And I think she's going to think that she was like booted out of their alliance, because we see this episode, Tony is annoyed that she's at the bottom and that she's below Tom in the totem pole. And so it's like sort of true though. She has a good read on the situation. I would be pissed off too if like Werner was my final 2, and then now he's like chumming it up with all of these random people that he just met. Tom is somehow above you in the totem pole of the alliance. And I was like, yeah, so true. Go Tony. I don't know how Annalise got so good with them from the tribe swap, which was like 6 days long, but now Annalise is up in there.
Yeah, it's just. I feel like a lot of the social game we're not shown if it doesn't end up being important. And I feel like right now it's not really important that Annalise is chummy with everyone. So I'm interested to see like what happens with that, just because everyone seems to notice that Annalise is like up in there, but like is she important or is she just like the Troyzan of their alliance? Where she's like
Yeah.
high but a goat.
We don't really know, you know? We just know that she's somehow super close with Werner and she's in there with Katinka and Jean now. So, like, that's the main power of the alliance, I would say. And now Tom has been brought in, and then PK and Tony have been given the boot out of that alliance. And so I wrote in my notes, I think Tony needs to flip. She's going to realize that, like, if PK was voted out this episode, that like she's in some deep doo-doo crap because PK's gone. Polarizing has no friends and like no alliance, and like it's just Polarizing and Tony trying to take out Werner, who has 1/2 idols. And I'm like, okay, Tony, let's make a move.
Yeah, and doesn't really end up happening that way. So
it was so close to being such like a fun tribal council. So we see when Nico is questioning everyone, PK has a great read. He calls out, he's like, Werner, Annalise, Katinka, and Sean are the top 4. Me and Tony are on the outer, and then Tom is being just brought in for numbers, and Shanae and Polarizing, you're on the outs. And he just like lays it all out there, and I was like, shoot. Yeah, PK, that is like the perfect read because that is literally the tribe dynamics right now.
Yeah, and I think it's really interesting to see someone have such a good read on tribe dynamics, especially because then it kind of starts an argument, but not like a that's not what it is argument, but like an argument about Tom specifically and how this whole thing about how Tom is just being used as a number, and they're like, but why would you do that? And he's like, they're nice to me and you're dicks to me. So
yeah, you know, should have thrown a few more challenges pre-merge to vote these people out.
Yeah, I guess.
So basically, it's time to vote, and then it's idol train time. So Polisa stands up and she plays her idol. So then PK stands up and plays his hot dog idol. And I was like, okay, let's go. Both of the cool people are safe. And then, oh no, Werner stands up and then also plays his idol. And I thought it was interesting that everyone was like, okay, yeah, you know, Werner, play your one of 2 idols. No one here now that 3 idols have been played is going to ask you for your second idol because 3 idols have been played. Maybe you go home with 1 vote or 2 votes, which could have happened if the votes were done correctly. But yeah, I was surprised. Werner is going to play those 2 idols even if they were like community idols.
Yeah, and so it ends up that all but 2 votes were negated. One of those votes was for Tom, and one of them was for Shanae. And so they go to a revote, and then on the revote, Shanae gets voted out. And I mean, that's what happened. And I feel like it's one of those things where everyone was like, oh, Tom, you're just a number. But then when push came to shove, they kept Tom. So maybe being just a number isn't that bad.
Yeah, you know, like once the 1-1 happened and like Werner got 2 votes kind of thing, it was just like crap. The Polarizing, Shanae, Tony, and PK group should have come together and done a 4 strong. And they know that Werner has an idol because Werner told Tony that he has an idol and Tony told PK. So they all know that Werner has idols. Maybe not put the votes on Werner, especially if everyone's going to get spooked and have an idol train happen. They could have had Tom go out. They could have had someone, maybe Annalise or Katinka would be a good person to vote out because they're sort of not really at the top, but also they're part of the glue of the alliance. If you're voting out Tom, like the fight that just happened, sort of expendable. You're not really like dismantling the alliance. So you need to vote for someone who doesn't have an idol. They won't get spooked into playing an idol. And there's still like someone important in the alliance. And just when that 1-1 happened, I was like, damn, it's over for Shanae. She's obviously getting voted out because the Werner group has the majority, which just sucks because the minority is still a minority going into episode 11.
And they've burned both of their idols. So they're basically going into episode 11 with a minority. And without any safety. So
yeah, literally, I am hoping PK, Palesa, and Tony can come together. Hopefully, after this vote, Tony and PK realize that they've sort of been booted out of their alliance and that they need to do something or find an idol, do some cool idol play. But they're still in a 5-3 minority, which sucks. So I could totally, like, the Werner crew is not going to split up. I don't think, like, Katinka doesn't really have a reason to flop. Annalise doesn't really have a reason to flop. At least at final 8, maybe at like final 5, they'll flop on Werner because people realize that Werner is too big of a threat to actually bring to the final 2. But when it's 5 versus 3, they're probably not going to flop. If we're wrong, I would totally love that. And I would love to see the PK, Palesa, and Tony group not get voted out in the next cluster of 3 that we do.
Yeah, I would also like to see that, but I'm not super hopeful that it happens. So we'll have to see. As always, in the next week, we're going to be watching another cluster of 3 episodes. So we're going to be watching 11, 12, and 13, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, let us know what you thought of these 3 episodes down in the comments below if you've been watching along with us. As always, please don't leave any spoilers because we're trying to go into this spoiler-free and not know what happens, who wins, who loses, everything in between. So, yeah, we'll see you guys next week for those next 3 episodes.